Okay, so we started designing a chart using the colors that were available on screen by default, and we call that the default palette. However, if you want to have a different set of colors, you're perfectly at liberty to do that by setting up a new palette of your own. So let's do that now. I'll start a new chart, and you can see here are the 52 default colors again, which I will now throw away. By going into the palette menu, remove colors, remove all unused colors from the palette. Obviously none of those are used because we haven't started yet. So bang, we have nothing. Next thing to do is to go back to the palette and add some. So I'm going to add a thread and choose some colors just for the sake of it from Anchor. So we'll have a red and a blue and a green and lots of oranges because I feel like it. So basically any selection of colors that we like up to a maximum of 254 colors. Hit save. Here we have the palette. And now to make sure that that's the one that you see in future, I go back to palette and save current palette as the default. If I start a new chart, so that's creating a palette of your own. Now, working along different types of stitches. We've seen how to use full stitches. Next to that, we have the diagonal half stitch types. Next to that is a button that allows us to do 4 full stitches at once, or 9, or lots. Another thing that's useful for coloring in big areas is flood fill, which is this button here. So I selected flood fill, selected an orange color, click in the middle of another shape, and it'll fill full stitches until it reaches an edge. We've seen half stitches. Some people call these quarter or 3/4 stitches. These small buttons and these ones do the same thing, except that the ones on the right also add a line of backstitch of that color as well. You can see the difference clearer if I switch to the symbol view. Next to that is a menu holding some very odd stitches. These are the kind of things that people use to recreate legacy charts from the 1800s or what have you. A variety of unusual shapes. We're going to ignore everything else for the minute because they are, if you like, the advanced or rarely used bits. For decoration, we can also add small beads, large beads. In a similar vein, more commonly used, French knots and buttons. Now we move on to backstitch. This is the normal backstitch line. And to add backstitch, you click, hold the mouse, move it around and decide where you want it to end up and then let go. We have 2 styles of backstitch. The standard one has a standard thickness, but if you were to increase the number of strands for the backstitch from its standard 2 to something bigger, it will draw bigger in the PDF that you actually end up with. But if you want to see them thicker on screen, you can choose the thick backstitch style from that little drop down menu. And you can see that's got a good clout to it. Next to the backstitch, we have running backstitch, and that works on the basis of you Click the mouse, hold it, and don't let go. And it'll attempt to draw lines connecting up wherever it sees the mouse move. Next to that, we have chain stitch. And finally, kind of bead, which works exactly the same way as Backstitch does. Tubular beads can be of any length you like. Now, that's quite a messy screen, so for the minute, I'm going to start a new one. And move along to shapes. You saw me draw circles earlier. We can also draw hollow circles, filled rectangles, hollow rectangles, and various shapes made of beads or triangles, for example. Shortcuts for making shapes on screen. This pencil button with a line under it works rather like Backstitch, but draws lines of full stitches. This button lets us use TrueType fonts which are built into your system to put big, chunky letters on screen. And when I say chunky, I'm not messing about. The thing is, even a size 10, 12 font can't represent a nice smooth letter that you see in a document as easily as it can when it's tiny in a document. A size 12 letter literally has no more than 12 dots top to bottom. And 12 dots top to bottom in cross stitch is quite a lot of stitches. Let's see how that looks if I type it in. You can see where it's going to land on the paper. Just zoom in a bit there. Yeah. Let's move it across. Move it down. And then I'll just paste it underneath that cross. So, if you're typing a letter in a word processor, those dots that you can see are minuscule on page and they look very smooth. As cross stitch, they do always need a little bit of tidying up. So, to do that, you still, however, was using the left mouse button to draw. I can also use the right mouse button to erase. And right mouse button works with more or less all the tools that you see on the top. If I want to draw a rectangle, I can use the left mouse button and drag one out. But if I want to erase a rectangle, I can do exactly the same by using the right mouse button instead. And then we'll have a look at nicer letters. This button allows us to use backstitch letters. We have a number of them defined within the program. So I'm going to use Classic 2 and go hello push. Again, I can choose the color. Again, I can just paste it. Paste. Now you can see because we're using backstitch lines, the letters are much nicer on the eye.